Welcome to Firewise in the Classroom, Chapter 8, Firewise Community Risk Assessments using GIS. So far, you've learned what wildland fire is and the science behind it. You've learned about the biomes and the topography of Minnesota, the geography of wildland fires, a bit about Minnesota fire history, the history of the Public Land Survey System, and a little bit about the Firewise program. You're going to combine all of this knowledge as you now develop GIS data that will help the DNR, local communities, and fire departments assess where fire risk might be highest throughout the state. You may want to have your home ignition zones and your Firewise home score sheets handy as reference as you complete the exercises. We're going to be taking 4 steps to create data in the GIS. We're going to learn about the GIS, navigate to your particular project area, create and edit data, and then analyze your data in collection with others. Let's get started. You're going to be following along with the exercises, and if there's any place throughout this video you need to pause, please do so. We're going to start by opening up the GIS. The login page should look something like this. The username and the password are both going to be the same, Firewise_editor. You're going to click Sign In to access the application. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, and it's basically a melding of a database and of shapes or features on the screen. In our case, those features are going to be points that represent structures on the landscape. As with most GIS, you'll have a map interface, which is the main portion of the application. You then may have a sidebar or table of contents that's typically on the left-hand side. And then you'll have a variety of buttons and tools, as well as a search bar in order to help you complete your work. Let's explore the sidebar first. If I click on the Legend button, you'll see that it opens, but there's nothing inside. And that actually reflects what we see on the map, which is simply an air photo with some boundaries. If I go to the next button, the Layer List, here I'm able to check the layers on or off that I'd like to see. Oftentimes, layers won't appear until you're more zoomed in on the screen. If I check the box, and then I use my zoom features, either the plus and minus button on your screen or your mouse wheel, what you'll notice is that I zoom in, I'm getting closer, and data is appearing on the screen. Sometimes you'll zoom in too far and have too much data. In this case, you're going to want to go back to that layers list and uncheck the box to turn it off. In order to see the symbology, what the features look like in the layers, you can click the small arrow beside the layer name. If I zoom out to find some of this data, what I'll see is previously collected Firewise points. This is data that's been generated by other students in the school year. Each dot represents a point of a property, and that property has been assessed for wildland fire risk. Students have decided if there are no risks, low risk, moderate, high, or extreme risk of wildland fire for each property they assess. And you can see collectively, as we zoom out, we're able to look at patterns both in the colors and where the dots are placed on the map. This third sidebar button, the Density Surface Model, is not yet available for this application. Check back with that button later. This sidebar can be opened and closed using the arrows near the bottom left of your screen. Let's take a look at the tools that we find within the map interface itself. We've already talked about the plus and minus button to help you zoom. In order to move around on the map, you're going to press and hold your left mouse button as you drag. In order to get back to the full state of Minnesota very quickly, I'm able to click the Home button. Again, notice that as you zoom out, detailed layers will disappear. Finally, I can use the My Location button if the device I'm using the GIS on has a lat-long location that it knows. If I need to search for something on the map, I'm able to type that into the search box. For instance, let's try Mud Lake. As I type in, all of the different items for Mud Lake are going to be listed. I'm not sure that any of those are what I'd like. I'm better off zooming in on the map a bit and trying again. This time when I search, things more applicable to where I'm at will show. I chose Mud Lake because there are many mud lakes throughout the state. Keep that in mind as you're searching. In order to zoom to something you've searched for, you're going to click on it in the drop-down menu. The search result will show, and the outline will be blue. You can choose Zoom to here. If that's not the mud lake that you're looking for, you could choose Show More Results and pick a different item from the list. Let's try something with a more definitive name. We learned about the Moose Lake fires. Let's find out where Moose Lake is. As I'm typing, certain things drop down in the menu. Usually, the topmost item in the list is the thing that best matches your search, and that's what we're going to choose. As I click, it zooms into the town of Moose Lake. I can zoom even further in to get a good idea of what the town looks like. In order to close my search window, I'm going to click the X box. You'll notice there's a drop-down menu here for searching. Later on, when we're searching for Township Range section, we're going to want to search only for that particular layer, the section layer. Up until now, we've been searching for all of the data layers available to us in the GIS, and this takes longer. Clicking on the base maps, I'm able to choose a different background. There are numerous base maps I can choose from. I highly recommend you choose one that says DNR. Those data layers draw more quickly. For instance, let's take a look at just a street map. The work you're going to be doing for creating data in GIS will definitely require an air photo. So let's go back to the base map gallery and make sure that we choose something that has an image as the background. This next tool is a measure tool. I'm able to choose to measure either an area or a distance, and then able to choose what kind of units I want to see in. I'm also able to choose a location by clicking on the button and clicking somewhere on the map. I'm able to get the latitude and longitude coordinates. Let's try a measurement instead. If I click the area measurement tool and I want to measure how many acres something is, I'm going to click on the screen to start the shape. I'm then going to click and drag my mouse. Each time I drag the mouse and click, it's placing a vertex. That would be a point within the shape. When I choose to double click, that will end the shape. And here I see how large the area is. I can click Clear to remove that measurement. And the same goes with distance. Click the Distance button, click what distance element I want to measure. Let's choose miles. Start the shape by clicking. Each time I want the line to change direction, I'm going to click to place a vertex, and I'm dragging my mouse as I go. Double click to end the shape and get your total units. The reason the measure tools are important is as you're creating these Firewise risk assessments, you may need to measure things like how long the driveway is, or how wide the house is, how far the trees are from the house itself. Let's clear this measure tool and get to the heart of what you'll be doing today. Before we create or edit data, we're going to want to zoom in and focus on a particular area to create data for. If your teacher has assigned you a Township Range section, you'll want to type that into the search box now. Make sure to use the drop-down button and choose to search only the section data so that it zooms to your area faster. I'm going to type in T145, R42, S33, that stands for Township 145, Range 42, Section 33. And you'll see that it does indeed find one result. That's good, we don't want more than one. And it's going to zoom me to that particular section. Now, I'm really lucky because in this section there are very few properties to assess. You may, especially in a city, zoom into places that have hundreds, if not thousands, of different section properties. If you get overwhelmed by the number of houses or data assessments that you have to create, don't worry about doing the entire section. But the more data that you can create, the more valuable this GIS is to local community officials and fire departments. All right, this is the area I know that I'm working, so I'm going to close the search details. I'm also going to click the X button so that the drop-down menu goes away. Now I can see my Edit button. To create data, I'll click the Edit button, and I'll click the data layer that I want to create. We only have one option. I'm then going to click to place a point on the primary structure of the property I'm zoomed into. I'm not going to worry about the outbuildings, things like barns or sheds or garages. I'm only going to worry about the home or the business that I see on the screen. When I click to place a dot, the attributes or the description of that place will appear as a form I need to fill out. Rather than all of the dozens of different ways that we learned about Firewise risk and safety, I'm going to be able to choose just from a few simple drop-down menus. The ratings you choose are all up to you, but remember, fire departments in your communities depend on the quality of the data that you create. Let's start with vehicle access. If I believe this property has good access for a fire truck or another emergency services vehicle, I'll choose good. If I look at tree cover, I've got 5 options. This particular property is very fire-wise. There are no trees near the structure. If I had trees that were within 30 feet of the structure, or I wasn't quite sure, I could head on over here and use my measure tool to measure the distance from the house to the trees. That would help me decide on the tree cover score that I chose. Other risks is kind of a catch-all category. If you refer back to your home ignition zone and your home risk assessment worksheet, look at some of the items on the list and see if they exist here for this property. Overall, you'll need to choose a wildland fire risk score. I really don't see any other risks that apply to this property, so I'm going to choose no risk. Finally, I have to give an overall rating of wildland fire risk to the property. Because there are no trees anywhere near the house And because there are no other risks that I've identified, 1 and 1, I'm going to choose an overall level 1 risk rating of 1. Remember that these scores are completely up to you, but that fire departments and local community leaders are depending on the quality of your data. Finally, I'm going to enter my school name or my independent school district number if I know it. I don't need to worry about filling out any other part of the form. I can simply close this box. Now I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to look for other properties that I need to assess. Let's head to this one here. In fact, I'm going to stay zoomed out so you can see the driveway. Click on residential structures. Click on where we believe the house itself is at, and then answer the questions. Vehicle access. Well, it's a long driveway, but there isn't too many trees beside it, and it looks like there's a good turnaround at the end, so I'm going to choose good. Now, the tree cover of the house is another story. It looks like to me that there are plenty of trees around the home. I may need to zoom in or move around so that the score box doesn't obscure my view of the house. I think from what I see here that there are trees within 30 feet of the house, plus the view of the house is obscured, meaning there are branches that are overhanging. If I think about other risks on this property, there's a pretty large forest here, and there's not a lot of access for a driveway between the house and the main drive. That could be difficult for someone to turn around. If the photo wasn't so blurry, I might be able to tell what the materials were around the house. But I also noticed that there's a wood pile and a small shed that seem to be nearby. So overall, for other risks, I'm going to choose moderate. Now I've got to pick an overall level 1 assessment rating for wildfire risk. Up above with tree cover of 4 and other risks of 3, I think that means I'll choose between a 3 and 4 for the overall or average risk of this place. I'll choose 3 because there's quite a few open fields on the east or the right side of the property. I'll enter my school district number and I'll close the window. When I'm done editing, I can close this editor window as well. But if I need to change something that I've done, as long as this editor window is open, I can click on this dot and open it back up to make changes. Again, I can also hold my mouse button on this dot and move the dot around. Once I close the editor box, that's where things get interesting. Now the data that I've created is color-coded. The goal would be that I create enough level 1 assessments for an entire neighborhood that I'm able to get a gauge on what type of wildfire risk there is. For instance, if we zoom out and we find a place where many level 1 assessments have been completed, we can go in and see patterns. It sure looks here as though there's an awful lot of yellows and oranges and red dots. The oranges and the reds are the high and the extreme risk for fire. I'd like to learn more why, and I can zoom in to do so. When you've completed all of your data creation, this is when you begin to analyze data. Take a few minutes to try and write down notes about what you found in the data you've created. Do you see patterns? Do you see things that don't make sense? How does your data look compared to the other students in your class who are assessing the same area? Overall, if you're assessing a community, what would you say the general wildland fire risk is for that town? Pause the video now and write down your notes in your user guide. When you've completed working in the GIS, all you need to do is close the browser window. You'll automatically be logged out, and next time when you go to log back in, unless you've checked the box that said Save My Information, you'll need to use the same login and password. You can access this GIS at any time, but again, remember, this data is valuable and it's live. Any edits you make will be seen by anyone else accessing the data, and this data is very important to local communities and fire departments. Your work, it counts. This is the end of Chapter 8, Firewise Level 1 Assessments. Unless you are going on to create a community report in Chapter 9, this also completes the entire curriculum. If you have questions or feedback, or you'd like to share this Firewise curriculum with other classes in your school, have them go to minwildfirerisk.org or email us. We look forward to hearing from you.